what I learned after my 25-year marriage about what to look for in a relationship. Hi, I'm Charzat Morgan, author of What I Did for Sex. And I'm also a life coach at the Treasure Within Coaching. If you want to work with me, the links are in the description below this video. Before I tell you what not to look for, what to look for, not look for in a relationship, I just want to say that I was married 25 years exactly. I filed for divorce on our 25-year anniversary to a really great guy. Like, he was a good guy. But after the kids were grown, we realized we wanted different things out of a relationship. I just wanted a lot more sexual passion and intimacy, and that just wasn't important to him. And ultimately, I couldn't be with someone who didn't want to bring emotion into their sex life and who didn't care how I felt in the bedroom. I just couldn't. I just left so I could be more and feel more. My problem was, when I left him, he was still so nice to me. He's always been nice to me. Always. In every way. He never talked bad about me to the kids. You know, we split the money easily. No hassling over anything at all in our divorce. But I had a really freaking hard time letting go because I was angry with him. I hated him for a long time for all the ways. The last 3 years of our marriage, I became a lot more sexually interested in him. We became super close, actually, and we got along super well and spent a lot of time together, more than we ever had, and we're really happy together. But in the bedroom, I was very, very sad and hurt. And that pain, when I finally learned how to handle pain, is why I became a coach. Now I figured out how to deal with emotions, but I was really stuck because I kept thinking about how hurt I felt and how wronged I felt, and I couldn't let that go, and I didn't know how to let that go. It was only recently in reading the John Gray's book, Mars and Venus Starting Over, and doing the feeling exercise in chapter 7, that I was able to start letting this go and taking responsibility for my part in the relationship and feeling the love again that we had at the beginning, and the love that was still there and is still there. So that's just a recent thing, because for the past 7 years, I kept hating him or being angry with him or feeling wronged by him, But this video is me taking responsibility and saying, he was never going to meet all my needs. And I knew that from the beginning. So I'm going to take responsibility for that. And I'm glad that I married him anyway, because I would have rather had that marriage with him than no marriage at all. And often that's the alternative. I see so many people that get married in their 50s for the first time, and then they missed out on all those years. I had some really wonderful experiences in my marriage, and they're all in that book. And the opening chapter is the night I left him. And you'll have to read it to see why it's such a good chapter. So what have I learned? Let's now get to it. And if this is going to be your second, if you're divorced and looking for a new relationship, you may enjoy this too. One is screening. Screening, besides the obvious things that you screen people for, ask somebody what they want out of a relationship. How important is sex to you? Personal development, spending time with family, traveling, pets. What do you want out of a relationship, and what is important to you in a relationship? Second thing is important is for men to see, like, men want to give to us and make us happy. And a man is going to feel really fulfilled if he can make a woman happy. So guys, can you make this woman happy? Or are there areas where she's complaining and dissatisfied already? And ladies, does this man meet your needs? Or are you already dissatisfied that he doesn't make enough money, or that he's not good enough in bed, or that he doesn't get you emotionally, or that he spends more time on his phone than with you? Consider these things. And you can also look whether it's something in you or whether this person just isn't the right person for you. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that people are, that there's no alcoholism, that there's no cheating, that people are solidly self-loved and self-sourced, like not that you're needy and looking to this person to be your everything, that you have outside interests, that you have friends and a job and a spiritual practice. But still, we can end up in relationships that are dissatisfying. The second point I want to make, so if screening was one, the second point is love is not enough. My ex-husband and I would say we do feel love for each other, but love isn't enough because some people want different things out of a relationship, and people have different amounts of comfort with intimacy and with sex and with taking risks and moving forward in life and with personal development and even with going to counseling if the relationship doesn't work. I talk to a lot of people that are unhappily married and I say, have you gone to counseling? And often I hear my spouse doesn't want to go. So that could also fall under screening. Is this a person that believes in getting help if the relationship has problems? How important is a relationship to this person? Then I'd like you to also think about the kind of people you love and the kind of love you go for. We know that a lot of our patterns, they're not just from the collective, they're also from our childhood experience, because that's all we know. People go for the familiar. So if I'm raised by parents who were abusive, then love feels abusive. I'm going to keep going for abusive men. Now, that wasn't my pattern. My pattern was I would go for emotionally unavailable men. Either they were not interested in me at all and I would cry over them. That goes back from when I was a young child. I would cry over these boys, or later on as an adult over men that didn't want me. And I thought that was just, I would just keep wanting them. Instead of being like, he doesn't want me, forget it. Now I've evolved to the point now where if a guy doesn't want me, I don't want him anymore. But that's just something I changed in the last couple of years. Love that feels familiar. What kind of love feels familiar? It comes from how you were treated in your childhood by your mother or your father. So, for example, my mother was emotionally unavailable, although she loved me so much. And my ex-husband was energetically felt like my mom. He loved me. I knew he'd never leave me. He would always take care of me, but he was unavailable to me emotionally. And he didn't like sex. My mom doesn't like sex. But again, I thought if I married a guy who didn't like sex too much, he would never cheat on me the way my dad always cheated on my mom, including on their wedding night. So what does love feel like? Here are some unhealthy love patterns. Love feels as something that's unavailable to me. Love feels hurtful, depriving, unattainable, something out there, something I have to work for to get. Those are wounded love patterns. There could be more. These are just the ones that are true for me that I felt. But you can substitute your own. What does love feel like for you? And here are some unhealthy love patterns that I used in my marriage that made me stay. Those last 3 years, I stayed, even though I was going to leave him at year 22. But when he found out I was going to go to mediation, he called me from work and he said, I don't want a divorce. Let's talk tonight. And I made that mean he would do anything it took to work on the relationship. But it didn't, because he wasn't making the changes. But I have these beliefs that I can change you. Guys are like, oh no, not that again. Guys don't like that at all. I can change you. Or you're not available, but I can make you available. And because you love me, you will change for me. No. People change if they want to, but not for you. So those were my unhealthy love patterns. Maybe you can recognize some of your own in there. And then the ultimate one I'm going to take responsibility for, And the reason, and this makes me sad because I held on to this anger for 7 years because I blamed him for being unhappy. It's your fault that I'm unhappy. It's your fault that I'm not getting the good sex that I want. It's your fault that you're not giving me what I want. Why can't you just give me what I want? Why can't you make sex emotional? Why does it have to be only physical? It's your fault that I'm unhappy and I feel so wronged. That's such a victim mentality. That is total victim mentality. I felt entitled, for him to be the way I want him to be. Do any of you relate to that in your relationships? Do you feel entitled for your person to be the way you want and not the way that they want? Do you have a victim mindset, like, poor me, I'm so wronged? I realized that I just didn't do a good job of screening, and I did know these things about him, but I decided to marry him anyway, and I just kept a great distance in that relationship. The problem came up in year 22 when I started getting super horny and I just fell in love with him in a deeper way, and I just wasn't willing to, those things that were okay with me at the beginning were no longer okay because I had really changed and I wanted the intimacy that I didn't really want before because it seemed too scary when I was 27 and we got married. But now I wanted it because I wanted to grow, and I had opened my heart so much as a result of having been a mother that I was no longer okay with it not being there. So I changed, Well, one other thing I want to say is that the other thing is listen. I didn't listen. Even after my divorce, when I would go out with these guys and fall for them and cry over them, because I would get attached to guys I hooked up with, and I would cry over them, and I didn't listen. When they ghosted me, I would just text them to show them that I was still interested. I treated them, like I would have treated like one of my kids. You keep giving them love even though they don't respond to you, and I didn't know you don't do that with men, and I didn't listen. Someone not getting back to me is sending me a message they're not interested. Someone saying, Sharzad, sex is only physical. I didn't want to believe it. I kept thinking I could change him. I didn't listen. So to sum it up, what I have learned is before I'm going to get serious exclusive with a man, date a man, I'm going to do some screening about what do you want in a relationship? Can he meet my needs? Do you feel like fulfilled in this relationship? Like you can give me what I want so you can feel successful. Do we realize that love isn't enough? Have we looked at our unhealthy love patterns and how love feels to us? Do we take responsibility for our own happiness? And that we don't act as entitled or as victims? And do we listen? Do we really listen? Or do we just look for what we want to be the truth? I highly recommend the Mars-Venus books, Mars and Venus on a Date, Mars and Venus Starting Over. I have them all. I think they're really good books to help you get back on your feet after a breakup and to see how to build like a polarity relationship and take responsibility and get over like these hurts. It's so important when we're dating to remember our past relationships with love. And it's easy to do when we just allow ourselves to feel the anger, the sadness, and the fear and the sorrow of those past relationships. It's a really powerful way to heal and to remember the last relationship with love. I guess you could even do that for your relationship with your parents. If nothing else, you can remember that your parents at some point maybe loved you, even if they couldn't show it. And even if they couldn't show it, you could remember a time that you loved them when you were a little baby, looking at them for love, but they just couldn't give it to you. Those may be a little bit more difficult to heal. Fortunately for me, my parents loved me, even though they were a little bit emotionally unavailable. So I think that as adults, we all have some wounds from our childhood. I have a little grandson, and I can't always meet his needs. And sometimes he plays with other kids that are not nice to him, and he does this. He's sad. And I tell him about his feelings. Are you mad? Are you sad? And so he knows now what his feelings are, and it's safe for him to feel those feelings and to feel them. And little kids will just feel them. You give them a name to the feeling, they just feel it, and it just kind of passes right through. So it's really important to mirror love to our children. But I don't want to make this video too long. I hope that I've given you some good tips on what to look for in a relationship. Instead of what people often do, what I used to do is project a fantasy onto some guy and chase him. I did that so much. And if you read my book, What I Did for Sex, you'll see all these guys I used to fall for and cry over. I remember my sister saying, Sharzad, I don't know why you had sex with all those guys and cried over all those guys. Because I just had I did this projecting thing, and I had sex with men before they had earned the right. They hadn't yet bonded with me emotionally. So to them, it was just sex. That's a thing that women have to learn. If a man hasn't bonded with us emotionally, he can just have sex and walk off. It's easy for him. But I've already bonded emotionally while we were having sex, or maybe before. While we're having sex, I'm bonding to this guy because he's so affectionate with me. I'm going to say one more thing on here. The masculine energy is penetrating. The cock penetrates, but he also penetrates with his attention, with his desire, penetrates our mind, penetrates our heart. And giving is a lot easier than receiving. Giving is a lot easier than receiving. Taking is easy too, taking. But I'm talking about giving. Giving is an act of generosity, but receiving requires a lot of vulnerability. And that's why I think women have a little bit more value than men, not just because we bear the children. Our eggs are like so much bigger than the sperm, and we have to, our body every month prepares to make a child, and we have children, like the baby is in here for 9 months, and we give birth, and then we feed it with our breasts, and we nurture it. So, but we need the support of the man to have a successful pregnancy. So we need the men. But the women, we're receptive energy. We're receptive, and we have to be really vulnerable and soft. That's much harder. When women aren't soft, they're guarded, they're in their masculine energy, they're competing with men, they're harsh. I don't need a man, I can do it myself, and they're competing in the workforce, and they don't know how to relax and soften and open up. So because I'm in a receptive mode and my heart is open, I'm going to bond to that man. And that's why I don't have sex with men unless they're a client. I don't bond emotionally with my clients. I'm more in a very giving space. I bring my heart into it, but I'm in a very giving space because he's coming to me for affection and sexual acceptance and all of that. But for me to even kiss a man that isn't paying me, he has to have opened my heart, and I'm receptive. So I would fall for these guys. And I would project a fantasy onto them like, well, we could have sex again, or this is the perfect guy. I would see some guys on Tinder or OkCupid, this is the perfect guy for me. And I would build up this fantasy and project this fantasy onto him instead of living in the real world and just seeing what he actually did for me. So I had to learn that. I don't think that I did enough dating when I was younger. I didn't really date that much. I wasn't allowed to date in high school, and so I kind of always put dating on the back burner. I didn't really date that much. I didn't understand men very much. And, I was married 25 years, and things have changed a lot. By the time I got divorced, there was online dating. I think that I was super horny. I wanted to experience my sexuality, and with different men, with lots of women, and it's all in my book, and I didn't know that I would get attached to them. And I didn't understand a lot of the differences between men and women, which is what I just got out of that John Gray book, Mars Venus book. My videos are not so much about telling you a bunch of content. My videos right now are a lot about me sharing myself and my experience, and so that you can connect through to me through my story and through my sharing. I think there are lots of people out there who have content that tell you exactly, what to do. And I follow some wonderful coaches on Instagram, like the holistic psychologist, Zach Alexander. I did a YouTube video with him. It still won't upload because it's too long. I don't think my channel's been around long enough. And I get a lot of inspiration. They tell you, boundaries look like this, and codependency looks like this, and this is how you heal your inner child. They give a lot of content like that. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. My natural set is more to share with you what I'm going through, what I've learned, to share my personal story through my emotions and my thoughts and my experiences. That's mostly the kinds of videos I like to make, and that's really what I need for myself right now. So if you like my books, they're available on Amazon and on Kindle and on paperback. So thanks again for watching, and hopefully you've learned some things in here about screening for getting your needs met in your next relationship. And thank you for watching.